Okay. Hi, Erin. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
So, you got a book out called Haunting Around America. This is going to be about ghosts we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, yeah, Hauntings Around America. It spotlights different places around the United States that are said to be haunted.
Okay. What do you tell people who don't believe in ghosts?
I usually tell them that I was the same way for a while until my first experience. I understand those that don't believe. I completely understand. I always invite them to come along with me on an investigation and see what they think afterwards.
Okay. So, the investigations that you do are sort of the fodder for your books. Yeah.
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. Give me an example of what kind of an investigation. I mean, what is it about? What do you do exactly?
Essentially, what I do is I check out a place. Sometimes the person will call me and ask me, if I'll come take a look at it and help them decide whether it's haunted or not because they've been having some activity or it's a more well-known place. And I will kind of rent the place out so I can investigate. What I do is I take a bunch of equipment from cameras, voice recorders, and whatnot, EMF readers, and I go into the location thinking, nothing about the history of it. I do the history afterwards just so it doesn't cloud my mind. And what I do is I spend about 6 hours at each location, and I'll do EVP sessions, which are called electronic voice phenomena. That's basically a question and answer um, with the spirits and see if they respond. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Um, and then we go from there. I do a lot of debunking, just to make sure that there's nothing that can be explained. So essentially, say an air purifier or something is going on, but it sounds like a spirit's making things move around. Well, I can say, hey, it's this and not this. But if I'm left with evidence when it's over with, then I go on and say that it's haunted.
You mentioned something called an EMF. What is that?
It's an electronic magnetic field detector. So a lot of construction workers use it to look for certain wires in the walls. We use it because we think that spirits give off that electric field, and if it spikes, then we're thinking that it's probably something paranormal.
Are all spirits angry?
No,
Okay.
no. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't.
I guess I'm curious as to why somebody would hang around. Assuming that there is life after death and we are just energy and living in this particular body, and once the body dies, the energy moves on to somewhere else. Why would the energy feel like it needs to hang around places that perhaps had lived before?
That is something that I would love to know too. I have a few theories. One is they're kind of stuck. They have unfinished business. Sometimes those that passed away in a violent way, unexpectedly, they tend to stick around more so than those that who may have had an illness and knew it was coming. We get a lot of activity at old tuberculosis hospitals, and such like that, where there was a mass amount of death, and it depends on the age, but usually, the younger the person, the more likely they are to stick around, we've noticed.
Okay, well, I guess I want to ask you what kind of things have you seen and experienced that convinced you that this is actually true, that there are ghosts and spirits floating around? Well, what sort of stuff have you seen?
My very first experience was at Gettysburg, and we were on a family trip, and I saw what I thought were reenactors coming across the field. And it turns out that they weren't reenactors because halfway across the field, they all disappeared. My mom and I saw that. My dad did not. Um, but that was my best experience because it was a whole group of ghosts that just were there and then they weren't. Since then, I've been kind of chasing after trying to find another one of those experiences, But in the meantime, I've gotten a lot of voices that I've caught, disembodied voices. Doors slam in front of me. I've seen chairs move in front of me. A lot of shadowed people, it looks just like a shadow, but it's not on a wall or anything. It's right in front of me. A lot of things like that. Mostly voices and disembodied footsteps. Those are the most common.
You said that there are famous places. Gettysburg obviously would be a very famous place. And since so many people died there violently, I would think there might be a lot of people hanging around. Is there some particular, I don't want to use the word medium, but is there some particular skill or ability that you have that maybe other people don't to see these kinds of things?
I've wondered about that. I'm thinking probably not, because I've met some mediums that are amazing. They can pick up on stuff, and I'll test them out just to see if they're messing with me or not. And I can't do any of that. That's why I rely heavily on my equipment, but I do know people that do have that ability, and they're quite amazing.
Well, I had John Edward on the show, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, and he's probably one of the more famous ones that's out there. And he told his story about how he was totally skeptical about the whole thing, and then there was a woman that he met who was a medium who said that he had the ability, and he didn't believe it. But then as he got older, he started experiencing all of these different things and ways to connect with people, and it was just an amazing story that he told. So I'm not one to disbelieve, and I really keep an open mind about it, because I know there's so many people out there who have had these experiences. And I think just to shut it down for whatever your personal prejudices are, I think is wrong. I think people need to keep a more of an open mind about it. You know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do people actually call you and say, hey, there's weird stuff going on in my house. Can you come check it out? And I mean, you do this as a job?
Yeah, I do it. It started off just for fun because I just enjoyed doing it. But it did become a job. I never charge if someone has something going on. I'm coming out there for free, because it's not right to charge for something like that. But I may post if the person's okay with it about what I experienced, or I might write about it. But yeah, I had someone call me yesterday out in Connecticut who wants me to come out and take a look at their house because something's going on there. So I'm going to head out that way pretty soon. But yeah, I do that pretty often, a couple times a month at least.
What's the most common thing that people will call you for? Is it just like strange noises at night, the house is creaky, or what kind of things?
Usually the noises, or objects moving around on their own. Very rarely is it an apparition. Those are like our holy grails or whatever. But usually it's the noises, the banging. Sometimes it's faucets turning on and off by themselves, things like that.
I'm sure you've seen the movie Amityville.
Yes.
and a lot of that was kind of debunked, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I'm as cool of a movie and story it is. I'm not sure how true it is. And if it is, I want nothing to do with something like that.
Well, the murder was true. That was
Yeah.
definitely true. And the son obviously had some mental problems. All the things with the house and the flies and all that kind of stuff, I don't know. I think that was probably Hollywood
Yeah,
fantasy.
it sounds a lot Hollywood because
Yeah.
if you have a place like that, I would say you just need to go because that's not a good place.
Are most of the houses that people call you from, are they really old houses?
Yes, the majority of them are Victorian. I don't know what it is. I had one medium once tell me that it's because they did a lot of people died at home more so than they do now, and funerals were very common back then to be in the house. So that was their theory, and it makes sense. But yes, usually they're pretty old houses.
Where do you think is the most famous place in the United States that is quote unquote haunted?
There's a few, but I would go with Waverly Hills, which is in Louisville. I'm actually going to be there next week. It is extremely haunted. I've been there a couple times and it never disappoints. And to the ghost shows, they love to go there. That is their spot.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it. What is it exactly?
It was an old tuberculosis hospital. I think it closed around 1960 or whatever. It's huge. It's about 180 square feet. And though no one can explain exactly how many people died there, theory is that there's up to 60,000 that passed away inside there. So it was at the height of TB. It's a really creepy structure.
You know, the other one that I always am fascinated by are the old psychiatric hospitals.
Yes.
Have you been
Yes,
to any of
those are
those?
creepy. I have. I actually went to one when I first started ghost hunting, and it was almost my last time. It was terrifying. I actually got locked in a room, even though the door didn't have a lock on it. I couldn't get out. It was really creepy. I try to avoid those, even though they are usually the most haunted. I tend to stay away from them because of that first experience.
You got locked into a room that there was no lock on the door?
Yes, we took turns going into this room. We were told ahead of time that it was the most active location in the whole building. And when it was my turn to go in, they shut the door and I sat down and I immediately started feeling just really uncomfortable. And I told my friends, I was like, I need to get out of here. Something's wrong. And they started to pull on the door and they couldn't pull it open and I couldn't get it open. And I just started I think I had tears in my eyes. I was really creeped out. Eventually it opened, but there was no lock. The door, it was from like 1890 and it had long since been broken.
Wow. How big was this room?
It was really small. It was what they considered solitary confinement, even though it was in a psychiatric hospital. Um, and it was real small. You couldn't even stand up all the way. It really shows you how deplorable the conditions were for these people back then.
Oh, this was like, okay. They
Yeah,
used to call him the hole or something like that.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, I don't think I
Yeah.
would have gone in there in the first place.
I am sorry that I did.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we got to kind of wind this down. So your book is called Haunting Around America, and it is out now and available.
Yes, it's available on Amazon and it's in hardcover, paperback, and ebook.
Okay. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Sure, it's huntingsaroundamerica.com. There's a blog on there where I spotlight locations, a bunch of pictures of different locations, and videos.
Okay, great. How long has the book been out?
The first one came out in 2020. Volume 2 just came out 2 weeks ago.
All right. Have you had any TV producers sniffing around about making your book into a TV show? I know these shows are very popular.
I've had a couple. I would really like to get it out there. I really would. It seems like a whole different world for me, and I'm not really sure which way to go with it.
All right, Erin. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your stories, and best of luck with your books. I hope they do well.